Chad Berry, you are a scholar of Appalachia and its history and people, as well as a senior administrator at a college that specializes in serving the region. And Silas House, as well as growing up in Appalachia, you are a writer who has written searching but sympathetic commentary and fiction regarding the region, its people, and its culture. We hope you'll share your thoughts on some aspects of Vance's work. First question.
In your reading, what is the most favorable thing you can say about the book?
Well, for me, I don't think it's an intentionally malicious book. I think he's very misled, but not malicious.
And I think it's sparked a renewed interest in the people of Appalachia and the region in general. And I think it's given us some view or glimpse of entrenched poverty.
I know that you both also have deep reservations about the book. What aspects concern you the most?
I think for me is that there's so much information without context. And that's always a problem when you're talking about a specific culture, to never offer any context. He sort of perpetuates this long-held idea that Appalachians choose to be poor, that they choose to not work, that they choose to be addicted to drugs, etc. And he leaves out, all the reasons these things actually happen, like living within a mono-economy, living within a place where hard labor leads to pain, which leads to drug use, living in a place that's a testing ground for pharmaceutical companies, et cetera, et cetera. So it's always really dangerous when you act like you're an expert about something but actually don't know anything about it. Or if he did know about it, just chose to not share that information. So that is deeply troubling to me, and that's why I think it's a dangerous book, and that's what I always call it.
I agree with Silas. I would focus my dislike around the culture of poverty argument, which emerges in the 1960s.
It requires a trained mind and a healthy body. It requires a decent home and the chance to find a job and the opportunity to escape from the clutches of poverty.
And so I think Silas and I are in agreement about that notion of these people being deficient. They're poor because of their own choice or their own actions.
Thanks. Yes, it is easy to move into that assumption. You've already said a little bit about what I'm going to ask you next, but feel free to come at this question perhaps another way too. It's also problematic to think of all of Appalachia as having some overarching similarities. Vance's work doesn't make this assumption explicitly, except in its title purporting to have something to say about all hillbillies. But does his book essentialize the people of Appalachia in problematic ways, and what effects can that have?
It absolutely essentializes, and by that we mean tells us the essence of what in this case becomes 28 million people living in the Appalachian region. 28 million people. This is a man who started out writing, I thought, a memoir of his young life. And then it becomes a memoir of a family, and then it becomes a memoir of an entire sub-region of Appalachia, of Appalachian Kentucky, or Central Appalachia. And then it's, by book's end, it seems to be applied to all the people of the region. So it's not only essentializes, it universalizes too. So it says, here's the essence, and this is universal throughout the region. And it's ironic that he does this for a people who largely don't identify as Appalachian. They have a much more typically have a much more localized identity of being from a particular place, on a particular creek, or a particular part of a county, or even a county, sometimes even a state. But a lot of the people that I know in the region are reluctant to label themselves Appalachian.
Even the subtitle of the book generalizes in that the title is Hillbilly Elegy, a memoir of a family and a culture in crisis. So, you know, it's absolutely doing that. And so I guess I'm a little more cynical in that I do hope that everybody wants other regions to prosper, but I also fear that we all need somebody to feel superior to. And I think often rural people are the ones that people can still, in quote unquote polite society, feel superior to and announce that, you know. And so this book absolutely does that, and it's been so widely embraced. So many more than 1 million copies. Last time I looked, it had sold 1 million copies. So it's definitely, you know, being held up that way.
And your point about the subtitle is good because everyone in the mountains is somehow complicit or affected by this defective culture with very little regard to history or economics or the systemic structures that keep a people in a place mired in poverty, including the political economic structures of a particular state like the Commonwealth of Kentucky.
When people tell me that they read the book and they loved it, I always just ask them to widen their knowledge now and say, well, don't let that be the be-all, end-all of your knowledge of Appalachia. And so I try to direct them to other books that do that, whether it be novels or poetry, or the one that I usually mention the most is The Quintessential History of Appalachia, I think, and that's Uneven Ground by Ron Eller, which gives you all the context that Hillbilly Elegy leaves out.
Does it?
Yeah, that's actually a great reference. When I first came to Appalachia, that was one of the books put in front of my nose, and I found that to be very powerful. It's always difficult to look into the mind of an author, and it's remarkable that the book has had the impact, sold 1 million copies, that it has had, and one can't know just how Mr. Vance thought about that process as he was beginning to think about the book and write about the book. But I do think that Americans overall have a desire for the good of other people in the country.
We will be sure to share back with you what we learned from the other presidents at the CIC meeting. Thank you.